For about a year now, I've been debating on whether or not I should film and release a full testimony video like this, exposing the double life that I used to live for many years of my life. And I know that filming a video like this and releasing it to the public for the whole entire world to see comes with costs. And I've been nervous about some of those things. And some of those things are, what are people going to think? You know, I have a new life down here in South Carolina. I've made so many new friends. I have a whole new church family. What are they going to think about it? What is my own family going to think? What is my old friends back home going to think about this? But also, I've been nervous about the possible retaliation from people who are involved in my story. What could they do after I release this video? But while I've been nervous about all of those things, I've finally found peace in this story. And I feel like God has put me in a place in my life right now where I have enough courage, enough boldness, and I'm comfortable enough to share with the world about the secret of life that I used to live for several years of my life. And while many people think they know the story, my whole story, and my testimony, they only know half of it. Most people only know about the porn addiction that I had. And while, yes, I did have a porn addiction and it is a big piece of my story and it's basically the start of my story, that's not all of it. And it goes a lot deeper than that. What most people saw was a Christian life that I was living growing up and into college was anything but that. Behind closed doors, I was living a life full of sin. I was living a life full of deceit, deception, full of lies, and honestly full of destruction, self-destruction that I couldn't save myself from. And it was eating me alive every single day. So what most people know as just a porn addiction went so much deeper than that. What most people don't know is that I was living a life of sexual immorality in same-sex relationships. Now, I know many of you are going to watch this and think, you know, I knew it. I could tell from an early age. I had my gut feelings about this. But I encourage you to stick around and listen because what you think you may know is not the truth whatsoever. While, yes, I was involved in a same-sex relationship and I struggled with sexual immorality growing up, it's not the typical story that most people have. I was never born that way. I was never born with the same sex attraction. In fact, I don't ever believe I was ever attracted to the same sex. I don't think I was ever attracted to males. What the problem was went so much deeper than that. The problem was I hated myself so much. I hated my image to a point where I was looking to other people for attention, for comfort. I was looking at other people to see exactly what I wanted to be and exactly what I wanted to look like. And I didn't have an attraction for others. I had an attraction for myself of what I could look like. I was lusting over myself to be the person that I wish I could look at in the mirror. And that's what led to most of these things. So while many people have a shared story like mine, most people think that they were just born this way and had questions regarding it and then ended up in a lifestyle of sin and same-sex relationships. That's not my story at all. I know exactly when it started. I can go back and pinpoint the moment that everything started. And that moment was in fifth grade when I started to get bullied because of how skinny I was. If you know me now, or if you've seen pictures of me, you know how skinny I am. And I started to get bullied because of how skinny I was. I didn't look like the rest of the guys who were playing football, who were getting bulky. I was the guy that was called Toothpick, Slim Jim, Granddaddy Longlegs, all of those things. And while some of those things may have not been derogatory in context and supposed to hurt me, those things start affecting you after you hear it 10 times a day, every single day. And you start to hate yourself. And I began to hate myself at an early age and hate my image. I grew up in a very blessed family. I love my family. I'm proud of my family. But my parents got divorced when I was very young, and so I didn't have the typical childhood family unit that many people had, or what God's design for a family unit was. I didn't have that growing up, and while I'm so blessed for everything that I did have, I missed crucial things growing up to where I was could have been comfortable enough to ask questions. I didn't understand the things about my own body. I didn't understand the things about going into manhood. And those things really affected me because I resorted to finding things out on my own. So while I was getting bullied for how skinny I was, I began to have a very deep self-image problem and hating myself in the way I looked. So while I had to figure out everything on my own, the questions that I had that I didn't feel comfortable asking anyone about, it led me down a road of addiction. Because I remember one time I was on the school bus in fifth grade, and I remember people talking about male self pleasure, to put it lightly, and I didn't know what that meant. So I went home. I had a laptop at a very young age, and I searched what it meant. And there was a description, there was pictures, and there was videos. And of course, a young boy with the same parts of what I'm reading about, I try it out for myself. And what is something that is supposed to be sacred for marriage between a man and a woman became something that I started to become addicted to in fifth grade. At a very early age, I became addicted to self pleasure. And it didn't just end there. Also in fifth grade, I remember I was on the school bus and I was called gay for the first time, and I didn't know what it meant. I was a kid that people would call it chick magnet. I was the little boy who had the girlfriends in elementary school. I was the boy who was flirting with the waitresses at restaurants, and I wanted all the girls to like me. And so I never really knew what gay meant. So I went home, and on that same laptop, I looked up what does being gay mean. And I have the description, I have the pictures, and I have the videos of it all. And of course, I'm seeing two men. And after I became addicted to the self pleasure, because what I saw was a man doing it to himself, then now I see two men doing it together, and I became addicted to watching that. So early on, I had a body image problem, I had a self pleasure addiction, and then I had a pornography addiction of watching men, because that's all I knew. That's all I saw on my screen, and that's what I became addicted to. Having the same things, the same parts. I'm watching that and wondering why I don't look like they do. I'm a skinny guy, and I'm watching these grown men with muscles and wanting to look like something that I could never be, because that's not how God made me. I wish the story ended there, but it continues to get worse and worse. I grew up in the church. I grew up in a Baptist church, and it was something that was kind of taboo that no one really ever talked about. Sexual immorality wasn't a thing that we talked about in youth group that I could remember. I remember going to Awana on Wednesday nights and thinking that I gave my life to Jesus because I did a sinner's prayer, but I didn't really understand and captivate the purpose of the cross, and I didn't really understand salvation, and I didn't understand surrendering my life to Jesus and making him king of my life. So what I thought was living a Christian life, it was anything but that, because I thought I already surrendered and I didn't. And so as I continued to get older, the sinful things that I did, whether it was big or small, I thought, well, Jesus paid the price for it. I give him my life to him, and it doesn't matter. I can do what I want because he has already paid the debts of my sins. And that's so far from the truth, and it only leads to a continual destructive life. And that's exactly what it did for me. So as I'm going into middle school, the girls stop liking me as much as they did in elementary school. They start going after other guys. They start going after the football players. They start going after the guys who had muscles, the guys who were the bullies. And I never understood why. I thought I was being this nice guy and trying to get along with everyone, and I couldn't understand why I wasn't getting the girlfriend. I didn't understand why people continued to make fun of me for being skinny, why they kept calling me gay. And then we get to high school, and that's when everything started to get much, much worse. For the first time, I had a guy add me on Snapchat, and who I thought I was just going to be friends with started to act a little different towards me, and it felt like he started to begin to flirt with me. And there was this girl that I liked at the time, but I wasn't getting the attention from her. She wasn't liking me the way I liked her, and it was hurting me because I wanted to be with her, but I knew that it wasn't going to happen. And now here I am getting an attention from a guy on social media that I knew didn't feel right, but it felt so good to get the compliments, to get the attention that I so craved and desired from a girl, this girl, let alone any girl. And I began to play in to the attention that I was receiving. I started to entertain it, and things started to escalate on social media. We were talking, and it began to me comparing myself to him. I hated the way I looked, and I thought, I wish I looked like you. And we ended up started sending pictures and videos to each other. And that was the first time I've ever done that to anyone at all. And it started to get in my head of, man, I don't look like that at all. I wish I looked like this. And it was, I wish, I wish, I wish. It was a comparison that was just eating me alive, and it was destroying my mental stability. But I did it all in secret. I did it behind closed doors, and no one ever knew. But while social media was basically the extent of it in high school, in college it wasn't. In college, it got worse and worse and worse. I had this addiction of pornography. I had this addiction of self-pleasure that was happening every single day. I had the addiction of wanting to be someone that I'm not. The self-confidence issues, the self-image issues just continued to keep escalating and escalating in college. And I began to start doing things in person with a guy in college. And something that I'm embarrassed to share. It's something that is so disgusting still to this day that I did. But it didn't end there either. When I was back home in December of 2020, I've been in school for about a year and a half now at Coastal Carolina University. It was a school that I never thought I was even going to go to. If I became a keyboard warrior on social media, going after people, I was even attacking people who were gay and blasting them and calling them sinful people, that they were living a sinful lifestyle, while behind closed doors I was doing the exact same thing. So as I was getting involved in politics, I was also growing on TikTok at the time. I had about 65,000 followers on TikTok, and I met someone on TikTok, a guy who I thought I could be friends with, because he was also posting political content, and I thought it was funny, and we could collab and make content together. Well, it was kind of the same thing of this friend in high school, where we started out as friends, but then something began to shift and something didn't feel right. And I felt like he started to flirt with me. And I tried to push it off as much as I could. And I start to learn that he has a similar background as I do. He struggled with some of the same things that I did. He had a similar family history of divorce. And one thing led to another, where he starts to flirt with me. And I began to give in again. I start acknowledging it. I start giving it attention to the attention that I was getting. I started entertaining it. And the same cycle began to repeat, where we started sending pictures and stuff. But all this time up until then, I never wanted a relationship with a guy. I thought that was the line that I would never cross, because I was never attracted to the men. I was attracted to everything that I was getting, the pleasures out of it. I was getting everything that I needed, the fixes, and that's what I wanted. I didn't care about anything else. And I knew I would never cross a line into a relationship. So as I went back to campus in early 2021, I still kept all of this under cover. And by that time, I was basically in a virtual relationship with this guy who didn't live near me. He lived in a different state. But I felt comfortable. I felt loved. I felt something that I was desperately looking for years, and I felt like I was finally getting that. And even though it was from a guy and it didn't feel right, I was comfortable enough accepting it and getting what I wanted out of it, because I felt like I was in control of it all. So after I was back on campus, we were talking about going to a political event that we were both interested in Florida, and we both decided that we were going to go to it, and that I would just get the hotel and that we could just stay in my room. And leading up to it, a lot of things were talked about, a lot of sexual things were talked about, and let's just say I went to Florida prepared for anything that could happen between us. And when I got to Florida, it was the first time meeting this guy in person. I've never met him before. I've never seen him in person before. And we're staying in the same hotel room. And I gave myself away for the first time ever. And it was to a guy. And it didn't matter how pleasurable it could have been. It didn't matter how much I could have liked the attention that I was getting. Something felt off deep down inside me. Something felt wrong. Something felt guilty. And I thought, I always knew that I should save sex for marriage, but I thought, well, if it's not with a girl, then I'm not really breaking God's law and God's covenant of what marriage is supposed to be like. And I wasn't sinning in my mind because it wasn't with a woman. And that was the excuse and the justification I kept telling myself. But still, deep down, something felt very off and very wrong. And about 2 weeks later, after that conference, we both went back to our homes, and I'm back in college, and we were just talking over the phone, and I just basically said that I don't know if I can do this anymore. Something feels wrong. I don't think this is right, and I can't do it. As I was trying to end it, I was being accused of sexual assault. I was accused of doing things to him without consent. And that was so far from the truth. But the reason why he was accusing me of those things was because he didn't want me to leave. And he felt like manipulating me to a point where I would stay. And so he was basically going to lie. And he said that he would tell my friends and my family and my school and my workplace at that time that I sexually assaulted him, that I raped him. And that hurt. That not only did it hurt that I was accused of that, but it put a lot of fear into me. Here I am, a college student, just trying to grow, trying to build a possible career for myself, and I engaged in something that I didn't think was going to be this bad, and now I'm getting accused of this. And I tried to wiggle my way out of it, but the accusations were just being held over my head. But not only the accusations, there was life-threatening harm to himself too. He was basically saying that if I would leave, that he was going to take his own life after he exposes me for this assault. I ended up staying in it. And there's text messages out there, and there's pictures and videos and stuff out there that you would put money on it that I was, number one, in love, that I was attracted to the guy, that I loved everything that I was doing, because that's what the text messages and the videos and the pictures show. But it was only to get the pleasure that I wanted, when I wanted it, how I wanted it. And I was manipulating myself so much that I was manipulating him as he was manipulating me. So it was a mental circus that I was going through, and it was very destructive. But I ended up staying in it because I felt like I had to protect this person. I had to make sure that he was okay. I had that emotional connection of almost like a brother, that I had to make sure that his life would be fine, and it was my responsibility to make sure of it. So this went on for several months of us meeting up together, doing things, leaving, and then me still feeling uncertain about it and just wanting to get out of it. And there were times, so many times, where I would try to end it, and I was up until 4 o'clock, 5 in the morning, trying to walk this guy off the ledge because I was getting pictures of him holding a gun to his own head inside his car. And he would tell me that if I told his family, that he would do it, or if I called the cops and he heard the cops, he would do it. So I was at a place, I was basically stuck between a rock and a hard place because I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know what to do other than just stay in it and continue to manipulate myself into this. And meanwhile, I said that I was a Christian throughout all of this. In my own mind, I thought I was. He was telling me that he was a Christian throughout all of it, and he didn't see any sinful nature of any of it, because it was, number one, everything was being done in love. He said there was no justification in the Bible, that men can't be together, that same-sex relationships can't happen. He was manipulating Scripture to justify the actions, and he did it so well that I started to believe it. And so this went on for months and months and months, and I got to a point where I was in my college dorm my sophomore year, and I just broke down and started bawling my eyes out because of the pain that I was going through, the mental pain that I was going through, the manipulation that I was putting myself through, the manipulation of the toxic relationship that I was in. And all this time, I thought I was living this Christian life, but I really wasn't in church. I was definitely was not in the Word. I wasn't doing anything the correct Christian way. I was so far away from God. I was so far away from my upbringing. I was in church every single Sunday. I heard the gospel all the time. I was in Awana every Wednesday night. I was in youth group, and I just turned my back to all of it basically, and was trying to live a life for myself, live a life full of pleasure, full of fun, and full of something that just led me to destruction. And I just remember being in my dorm, and I didn't know where else to turn to. And instead of praying or anything or reading the Bible, I just turned on K-Love worship music, and it was something that I haven't listened to in years. And the first song that I remember hearing was a song by a guy named Phil Wickham called Battle Belongs. And I never heard it in my entire life. And I never heard of this guy that I knew of. Later on, I realized that I did hear his songs and we sang them in church. But the lyrics of Battle Belongs washed over me. When all I see is the battle, you see my victory. When all I see is the mountain, you see the mountain moved. So when I fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. And it was in that moment that I was like, I cannot continue to do this on my own. I had nowhere to turn to. And the friends that I tried to just semi-talk about it with, I was bringing it up a little bit. I didn't want to give them full details. They were kind of supporting it. And they were like, just live your life, be happy, be who you want to be who you are. That's who God created you to be. And I knew that was the biggest lie. I knew I was not created like that. I knew God didn't make me this way, because I could go back and pinpoint the exact moment when all of this started to happen. And that song just became my fight song that I listened to every single day, at least 10 times a day, day after day after day after day. But as much as I could listen to it, nothing ever changed, because I wasn't putting my trust and hope in anything other than myself. I thought I could get myself out of this. But as I'm listening to these lyrics, I knew there was something else that had to be done, but I wouldn't do it. So I continued to live in this lifestyle, this cycle of nonstop manipulation, toxicity, sexual immorality, over and over and over and over again. So I'm back home at this point now. And it's really escalating to where he's telling me his family's wanting to kick him out of the house. And I'm home for Thanksgiving, and he's saying that his family's kicking him out of the house, that they are just going insane on him over this. And I'm at church with my family back in Maryland, and I just began to start bawling my eyes out on the way to lunch. And we were on the way to lunch with our pastor. And mom's like asking me what's wrong. And I was like, well, my friend's getting kicked out of his house. I need to go down and pick him up and bring him back here. And she was like, you're not driving all those hours to just pick him up and bring him back here. Everything will be fine. And so while we're at lunch, it's just my family and my pastor. And I'm bawling my eyes out at the table, and they're wondering what's wrong. And I explained that my friend's getting kicked out, all of that. No one knows exactly what's happening. And we sat there and we just prayed for him. And it didn't help me. It didn't help anything at all. And as we went home to my house, Nana and Pops were there for some reason. And I walk in, and I was still bawling my eyes out. Nana is asking me what is wrong with me. And I was like, it's nothing. But she keeps asking. And I asked her if she could come downstairs. And I talked to her. And so we go downstairs. And for some reason, I just let it all out. I said, I've been in a relationship with this guy. It was a real relationship. I thought I loved him. I don't know why this was all happening to me. I didn't understand why I felt the things that I did. I didn't understand why I hated myself so much. I don't even remember exactly what I was telling her, but I just let it all out. And I remember her telling me that she knew about it. She was like, I knew. And I forget what I asked her, but it was along the lines of like, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you do anything? And she said, because I knew God would bring you out of it. And I didn't know what it meant at that time, that God would bring me out of it. But I do now. And I'm so grateful for his mercy and grace and love to bring me out of it. But it took a long time after that before I really saw that God brought me out of it. So mom comes downstairs because Nana said, are you ready to tell your mom? I said, yeah. So she comes down and I just lay it out. I said I was in a relationship, and she asked what kind of relationship, and I said a full relationship. And I was apologizing to her, and I didn't want to hurt her, and I was so scared that she would disown me, but she met me with love, grace, and mercy the same way that Jesus would. And she goes back upstairs and she comes back down. She says, I was going to give this to you for Christmas. It was a Bible that I wanted. It was like hers that I wanted. She said, but I think you need it right now. And I was like, probably. So I took it. And I asked what I have to do next. And they said, you have to block him. You have to lose contact because you're going to be sitting there like wanting to talk and wanting to know what's happening and everything. And so I did. I told him, like, I can't do this anymore. It's over. I'm blocking you. I pray for the best for you. I hope you thrive in life. And I blocked him. And to what most of my family knows, that's the end of the story. But it's not the end of the story. I wish it was the end of the story. But if it was the end of the story, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now. So Christmas comes, Christmas goes, and at this time I ended up moving to DC to start working in politics. I graduated in December of 2021 from Coastal Carolina University, and I started interning at a place that this guy actually sent my application into. So I had that like covering over my head. And I moved to DC. And in the early months of 2022, I was at the March for Life. It was my first March for Life. I was there for work. And I was doing interviews, and there was about 100,000 people there. And out of all of those people, all of them, I'm at the front doing interviews. And I turn around and I see him standing right there. And I thought, Lord, I don't even think I said Lord yet because he wasn't Lord. God, if he's supposed to be in my life, like, is this the sign that I need? And I debated on whether I should reach out to him or not, and I ended up doing so. And long story short, we fell right back into the exact place that I thought I was brought out from. We started dating again online over the phone, and then he started coming up to DC and staying with me in my apartment. And it was the exact same cycle over and over again. The manipulation, the threats, the sexual immorality, all of it was happening. The same story over and over again. And I got to a point where I was going to a church in DC. And the way that I just found this church was crazy because while I was still in college, I'd had no desire to live in DC yet. And I was scrolling through TikTok and I saw a video that says, if you live in DC, this is your sign to go to this church. And I just saved the video and didn't think anything of it. I thought, if I visit DC sometime, then I'll try it out. Well, I ended up moving to DC and I started going to this church and I fell in love with this church and I started to grow in myself. And I finally figured out where I stood on biblical marriage and same-sex marriage. And it was an Allie Beth Stuckey relatable podcast where she fully outlines marriage. And it was the first time I fully understood marriage in a biblical sense. And I knew exactly what I was doing was wrong. I finally understood it. I knew the sinful acts that I was committing and the guilt and the shame that was brought upon me. Once you fully realize what you're doing, felt like the weight of the world was just falling on top of me. And that's a place of strong, good conviction, but it's a place that you really don't want to be at because you feel so low. I was at rock bottom at that point. And I remember it was Good Friday, April 22nd, 2022, and I'm sitting in my apartment. I was like on FaceTime or Snapchat or texting this guy, whatever, and I was debating on whether or not I was going to go to Good Friday service at this church. And as we're talking, I have a mental breakdown again. And I felt like what was the Holy Spirit just basically saying, you know what you're doing is wrong. Turn away from it and end it once and for all. And as I'm sitting on the couch talking to him, crying my eyes out, I end up just obeying the gut feeling that I had. And for the last time, the final time, I said to him, like, I can't do this anymore. This is over. And I ended it. And I had Alexa turn on Battle Belongs. And for the first time in years, I had a sense of just pure peace rush over me. The shame, the guilt, the uneasiness of it all, it started to reveal itself. But I knew, like, I was genuinely sorry and upset about it. So I didn't know if I was going to go to church that night for Good Friday, and I ended up telling myself that I was going. So I went, and man, I've heard the gospel preached over and over again. I can't even tell you the number of times I've heard the gospel preached every Sunday for 18 straight years when I was at home in my home church, every Sunday night at youth group, Wednesday nights. And for the first time ever, the gospel hit differently to me. The gospel hit to where I understood my sin, where I understood conviction, where I understood the need for a Savior, where I understood what Jesus did on the cross. And as they're talking about Jesus' crucifixion on the cross and the power of it, man, I just began to sob in my chair. And for the first time ever, I finally asked Jesus to become the Lord of my life, my Savior, because I knew I couldn't do this alone. I was at rock bottom, and I couldn't do life without anyone by my side guiding me in the right direction, because I was doing it for so long on my own, and we all know that just led me to more destruction after destruction every single day of my life. And when they did like the invitation and we walked through the prayer and everything, but it hit differently for me. I don't even remember hearing the sinner's prayer from the pastor. I think I just started talking to God myself, and I left there with that peace again of like, okay, I have someone on my team. I know the author of my story. I know that Jesus has that song that I've been listening to, Battle Belongs. It finally makes sense that the battle belongs to him, that he's already gone before me. He's already won all of my battles. So all I have to do is just trust in him, and everything will be easy. So I thought. And easy isn't the word that I would describe the aftermath of me giving my life to Christ, because once you have something in your heart that is more important than life itself, Satan wants to try to steal it and destroy it for good this time. You know, a robber doesn't go into an empty house. A robber goes into a house that has a lot of riches in it. And that's exactly what Satan was trying to do to me after I fully gave my life to Christ, because the temptations were even worse. The struggles of fighting the temptations were even worse. I wish I could say that the porn addiction just disappeared, but it took time. It took sanctification, and it took me fighting myself and my urges and fighting my flesh and relying on Jesus to fight my battles for me, to where I finally was able to break the porn addiction. Did I stumble at times? Yes. Did I stumble back into self-pleasure at times? Yes. But it came to a point months down the road where I was able to say, I am free. I am free from the addiction. I am free from the struggles and the shame and the guilt that I felt for years and years, where I couldn't do it on my own. I've had the chains broken. And living in DC, I wish I could say that I just stopped talking to people online, but that wasn't the case either, because it shifted from the need for attention to now a need to just have someone listen to me. So as I was still talking to the people who were giving me the attention and trading things online, it was more of a sense of like, I know this is wrong, but I need you to understand where I'm coming from and try to help me through it. And I was always open about the struggles that I had with these people now, but it was different. And there was no attraction there, but the attraction of myself and the lust of myself was still there. And I can't thank God enough for just picking me up from where I was and bringing me out of the darkness into light and into new life. So the struggles were still there after I gave myself to Jesus and fully surrendered my life to him. A lot of people think that once you give your life to Christ that everything is just sunshines and rainbows, but no, the battle really begins now, because now you know what you're doing is wrong and the convictions are there and the temptations ramp up and you have to fight with everything in you to stay on the right path. So DC is a very dark and dirty place. A lot of people say Las Vegas is Sin City, but I would say that DC is Sin City. Whether it's the politicians, whether it's the staffers, there's a lot of dark, dirty, evil people there who are out to get you and who are out to do things to climb the ladder. And it was just something that I could not surround myself in, because I felt like I could have fallen back into the sin struggle that I was going through if I stayed in that place. So I felt this call, like this gut feeling that I had to go back home to Maryland, that I could live with my mom for a while and just save up money. And I was scared because at this time I was full time. I had benefits and everything at my job. And, I risked it. I just asked them, I can't be here anymore. I can't be in this city. I would love to move to Maryland to be closer. I can come down here like 2-3 days a week because I only live 2.5 hours away. And they graciously accepted that. And I was able to get out of DC, go down there a couple of days a week and work the rest of the days remotely from home. And while I was home, I was trying to find purpose again. I was trying to find something to live for, but everything that I was trying to find was not there. I wanted to be a high school tennis coach, and I got accepted for the position of head coach for my high school's rival high school as their tennis coach. But then I was looking for houses to buy, and nothing was ever working. There was no house that actually was either in my budget or that was fixed up enough that was livable. And then eventually the school tells me that the old coach decided to come back, and since she was a teacher and part of the system, that she gets the position over me. So I was no longer the coach. I never even got to coach at all after getting the position. So I felt like I had nothing to live for. A lot of my friends were already gone. They were still in college. And I just continued to pray on what am I supposed to do next. And I felt the call to go back to South Carolina. So I did. And it was something that I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing, but I felt the call to go back to South Carolina. And it was such a crazy way of how I got to where I am in South Carolina, because when I was down there looking for apartments, I went to the Republican Women's Club meeting, which I was going to when I was down there in college. And yes, men can go to this as well. So these were all of my older friends that I hung out with in the political field while I was down there in college. And as I walk in, mind you, I haven't been there in a couple of years, and my friend Jerry McDaniel, who has tragically passed away over the past year, she runs up to me and she screams and she's like, "Colton's back." And I tell her that I'm moving back down to South Carolina, and she tells everyone in the room, just goes nuts, and she starts introducing me to all these politicians, these state senators, these state legislature members. And then I noticed a family that she really didn't introduce me to, and I didn't think anything of it, but when I sat down in my seat, I realized that this was a candidate forum where the candidates who were running for office in South Carolina were there to answer questions, to give a little speech, and just get to know the voters and everything. Well, this one guy does his thing. He gives his spiel, and he answers a few questions. And I never felt so strongly about someone's motives as a candidate. I knew this guy was in it for the right reasons. I felt his heart, that he just wanted to serve his constituents well, and I knew that he would be great in office. So I took a picture of him and I posted him on Facebook, basically saying, "I'm moving back to South Carolina, fully endorse this guy, whatever I can do to help, I'll do it." And his family comments on the post, and his family adds me on Facebook, and just really didn't think anything of it. Fast forward to when I officially moved down here, there was a Phil Wickham concert down here at a church, and I went to it. And anytime I hear Battle Belongs live and get the opportunity to hear Phil Wickham live and hear Battle Belongs live and hear the song that God used to radically start changing my life, I'm going to take every opportunity. And as of now, I've seen him about like 10 times in 3 years, and it gets better every single time. But after the concert, I'm sitting in the parking lot just looking up more Christian concerts. And I see this concert for Cain in September of that year in 2024 at a church called Langston Baptist Church. And I thought, well, since I'm going to be down here, I'll probably go to it, but I'm not going to get a ticket right now. So I go back and I'm just scrolling on social media again, and I see that the daughter of the guy who spoke at the Republican Women's Club made a post online on Facebook of a picture of her speaking at an event at this church called Langston Baptist Church. And at this time, I was not house hunting, but I was church hunting and trying to find a church that I liked, and every one that I went to just didn't seem right. And, I've seen the name Langston Baptist Church twice now, and I decided, let's just try this one out. And it was a Wednesday night, and I decided to go to their Wednesday service. And I thought I was saying just like a stupid prayer. I said, Lord, if this is the one for me, just let them sing Battle Belongs, let Phil Wickham be playing, and that'll just be a sign to me. And I get there, and it's a huge church. Everyone was so welcoming going through the doors. And I go into the sanctuary, and I immediately already felt at home because I saw pews for the first time since my home church, and I haven't been to a church that had pews in it since then. So I got like goosebumps and emotional over that, and it sounds silly, but I've been going to non-denominational churches ever since I left for college and when I was in DC, and so the pews hit differently. And I walked down through the sanctuary, and I remember exactly where I sat. I sat on the right side, looking at the stage. And I sit down, and they're playing music over the speakers before service starts, and it's Battle Belongs. And I didn't know what to really think. I was like, well, they're not necessarily singing it, they're just playing it. And I was just like, okay, God, like I'm listening, the pews, Battle Belongs. And then the worship team comes out, and they start singing my favorite songs, like my top 3. Great are you, Lord, Yes I Will, House of the Lord. And I just started to sob during worship. And I was someone who never really put my hands up during worship. I always said I was a Baptist. I don't do that. And I put my hands up in the air singing. And I felt a tap on my shoulder. And this is all before the pastor even starts preaching. So like I was already feeling emotional before the sermon even started. And I feel a tap on my shoulder, and I turn around, and it's an older gentleman. He looks at me, he says, "Who are you?" And I was like, taken back. I was like, "I'm Coleton. Who are you?" And he said, "I'm Pastor Bruce." And he said, "I've never seen you here before." And I said, "Yeah, this is my first time." He says, I have to ask, but I think I already know the answer to it. And he was like, "Do you have a relationship with Jesus?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do. I didn't, but I do now." And he was like, "I knew it, but I just had to ask." And he was like, "I want to see you back here on Sunday." I said, "Well, as long as this sermon goes well, I'll be back here on Sunday." And the sermon was one of the best I've ever listened to. And as I was leaving, he said, "If you come back Sunday, I'll introduce you to the college pastor." And I was like, okay, great. Well, I really didn't want to be known in this church. I just kind of wanted to sit in the back and not have anyone know who I was, because I didn't want anyone to know my past or have it brought up or people find out about it. I just wanted a fresh start. So Sunday comes along, and I go back to that church, and sermon was great. The whole service was great. And I try to slip out before anyone could find me or see me. And Bruce comes up to me, and he was like, "All right, I'm going to introduce you to the college pastor." So I go over and I meet him, and I just felt like we were not going to be friends. He asked me a question about am I in college, and I felt like I had a very arrogant, selfish answer of like, no, I've already graduated. I did it in 2.5 years, but I'm still college age, blah, blah, blah. And it didn't feel like I made a good connection. And so I left that just feeling uneasy about it, but I was okay because I didn't really want to be known. I wanted community, and I was so desperate for friends and Christian friends in a Christian community, but I didn't want all of it. I didn't want to be involved. So either that night or a couple days later, I get a message from him the college pastor had says, "Great meeting you. I would love to meet up for coffee and just hear more about you." And I was like, "Oh, great. I don't know what I'm going to share, but fine." But I sent back, I was like, "Well, I'm actually going to Maryland this week. I'm going to the mountains, so I'm going to be out all week. We can do it when we get back, or when I get back." He's like, "Yeah, that works." So I get back, and we ended up going to Starbucks, and we immediately just hit it off. We were talking about college football, found out he's from Pennsylvania. He's a Penn State fan. I'm a West Virginia fan. We go way back. As rivals in football, and so we had a connection over college football. He says that he wanted to be a sports broadcaster growing up, and I was like, man, that's what I want it to be. And we had all these like similar connections, and then he's vulnerable, and he's starts talking about like his past struggles and how he had a pornography addiction too. And I was like, man, I've never shared any of this to anyone, but I also had a pornography addiction that I really struggled with, that brought me to my knees a lot of times. And that's all I shared about my story. I just shared the pornography addiction. And he was like, "Man, like, thank you for sharing that with me. And, you know, like, you're born again. His mercies are new every day, and you don't have to live in the shame and the guilt and the past of what of the addiction that you lived with and everything." And I felt like I could be friends with this guy, but I didn't want to share everything because I didn't want to jeopardize the possibility of being friends with him. Because if, as a guy, me sharing everything that I just shared with you, that's a scary thought, because he's probably going to think I'm weird, creeped out, doesn't want to be friends with me, definitely doesn't want to be like in a room alone with me. Because he might have a misperception of my story and think that I'm someone that I'm actually not, or I was born that way or whatever. So I was really scared to tell him. But long story short, he finds out that there's more to the story, and I went into his office, and I basically just laid everything out on the table. I was like, you know, I'm really scared to tell you this because I do want to be friends with you and all of that. And his wife was in there, which made it 10 times worse, because my fear is just like going through the roof. Like, what is his wife going to think about this? His wife's not going to want this guy to be friends with this new guy that they know nothing about. And he just shared all of this ridiculous sexually immorality, sinful lifestyle that he lived in. And as I got done, it looked like he was on the verge of crying, but I was like holding back tears, everything that I could, just to like be strong in that moment. And he met me with the same love, grace, mercy that my mom met me with when I finally told her. And he was like, "Man, that is in the past. God brought you out of that for a purpose. He brought you here for a reason. And you are living a new life. And we're here to love on you. We're here to walk beside you. We are here to do life with you." And that's all I wanted. I was so desperate for community. I was so desperate for Christian friendship, and I finally found it. He quickly became one of my best friends. And to those who know about the podcast, that is PJ, my co-host. He became the co-host of the podcast. We started doing life together, and I can't be more thankful for him and his wife, the friendship that we have. I feel like I'm part of the family. He's part of my family. She's part of my family. And it's a bond that I never thought I could have as a Christian with a past that I did. I'm so grateful for it. But the other thing was, like, I desired to have a relationship, but I was so terrified of telling a potential girlfriend about my story because it had to come up. And I didn't want her to find out from someone else, or this whole scandal come up and not hear it from me. So I started talking to the girl who posted the picture, who was the daughter of the candidate that I heard at the Republican Women's Club. Her and I start talking, and things were progressing. And I was like, before anything else goes further, I need to share my background story with you and my testimony with you, because it may affect how you view this potential relationship, and you might not want to be in it because of my past. And I fully understand if you don't. So We played pickleball one night. We won the tournament, and we went out to cook out with friends and everything. And after everyone left, it was about 11:25, and I said, "What time do you have to be home?" She said 11:45, and I said, "Great, I have 20 minutes to do this." So we sat in my car, and I just all of everything that I've told you, I shortened it and unloaded on her in 20 minutes. And her response right after was, "Oh, that's a lot. Wow." Basically, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for feeling comfortable and vulnerable enough to share that with me. I really appreciate it, but that's a lot that I have to go think about. So I was terrified of like what the outcome was going to be. I didn't know what she was going to say. I didn't know how we were going to progress from this. I didn't know what was going to happen. And when we finally meet up again, I was like, "So did you think about it? Like, what's your opinion on it?" And that same grace, mercy, and love that I had with my mom, that I felt from Christ himself when I gave my life to him, that I was met with PJ when I told him, she gave me the exact same grace, mercy, love that I needed. And I finally felt worthy of something again. I felt worthy of being in a relationship, because I never thought like I was going to be worthy enough for a woman, a potential wife, a potential girlfriend, because of the stuff that I did in my past. And I felt worthy. I felt seen. I felt heard. I felt loved. I felt forgiven. And it was just the perfect picture of the gospel was presented to me, of the love, the forgiveness. All of it was just given to me. And in that moment, I finally felt free from it all, because it was the last piece of the puzzle for me to just fully forgive myself and accept what has happened in the past and move on from it. And while the relationship didn't work out and we went our separate ways, and we're still like very close friends right now, and so thankful for the friendship that we do have. But as we went our separate ways and moved on, I never really understood why it didn't work out, because it felt like the stars aligned. I mean, how I got to South Carolina, the Republican Women's Club, the post, the social media post, me going to the church and all of that, I didn't understand why it didn't work out. But maybe it did work out. I think it worked out the way God intended it to work out, because I needed to know that I was worthy of a relationship, that I was loved, that I was forgiven, that I have that grace and mercy, and that I could forgive myself. And maybe that's the purpose of that relationship. And I felt like I've been given a second family, because their family has become so close to me. And I love each and every one of them like my own. And so I am so thankful for the way everything played out, because I now have been able to forgive myself. And I know that I'm worthy and capable of having a relationship again. So I'm so thankful for that. And basically ever since then, I've just continued to grow in my walk with Christ. I have made a church family that I love and adore. I love serving there. I love serving the church. It's something that I never thought was possible. I never thought I would be able to rebound from where I was, to have the church family that I do, to have the Christian walk that I do. I have brothers and sisters in Christ now. I have a best friend who loves on me. I have a best friend group that loves on me, that would do anything for me, that is constantly with me, whether I'm at one of their houses, whether they're at mine, where we're just doing life together. I have people that are just like family to me. And I can't thank God enough for everything that he's blessed me with. And so I never understood, why do these bad things happen? Why did I have to go through all of that to be where I am today? And the answer is because I never accepted the gospel and surrendered back then. I had to go through all of the turmoil to realize I needed a savior. I need someone that is bigger than me, more powerful than me, to lead my life and guide me through life that I could fully surrender to. So I had to go through the divorce. I had to go through being bullied for being skinny. I had to go through being called gay. I had to go through the porn addiction. I had to go through watching all of the things that I did. I had to go through the insecurities. I had to go through the heartbreak of no one liking me. I had to go through the rejection of girls. I had to go through talking to men online. I had to go through the sexual immorality acts that I committed with men. I had to go through the toxic relationship that I went through that was bringing me to my knees, that was bringing me to a mental instability place, a mental destruction place. I had to go through all of that to be to where I am today, to where I went from West Virginia that I thought I was going to for college to Coastal Carolina for whatever reason that put me into politics, which then led me to DC, and that's where I was on my knees and just finding Christ for the first time in my life. So I had to leave DC, go back to Maryland, and I couldn't find any satisfaction or love or purpose in Maryland, so I felt the call to go back to South Carolina. I went to the Republican Women's Club meeting where I heard a guy speak, and I took a picture, posted him on Facebook, and their whole family adds me as a friend on Facebook. And then I go to a Phil Wickham concert, and I look up other concerts, and I see this church, and then the girl of the daughter that I took a picture of, posted a picture of her at this same church that I saw online. And I go to that church, and now I have a church family, and I had to go through all of that to be where I am today, to be the person in Christ, the Christian that I am, the guy who just wants to serve others, that wants to see people come to know the power of the saving grace, love, and mercy of Jesus. I want people to experience what I've experienced, of the freedom, of breaking the chains, of breaking the shackles, and just running free with Jesus, and running free and doing life with people who actually care about you, who care about your well-being, who don't want to see you fall into any type of sinful lifestyle, who will hold you accountable and just do life with you and just love on you through it all. And so I am thankful for every single thing that I went through, the good, the bad, the ugly, because it wouldn't be where I am today. And so my encouragement to you is, whether this just helps one person, 10 people, many people, or just myself continue to share my own story, I encourage you that the battle does not belong to us. 2 Chronicles 20:15 says, "Do not fear or be dismayed, for the battle belongs to the Lord." Take heart in that. Know that Jesus has already gone before us. He has won the battle. He has fought your battles for you. He is the author of your story. He has written every detail out of your life. And when you believe that your story is coming to an end, take heart and just understand and know that a new chapter is just beginning.